When Triple H first took over WWE creative after Vince McMahon stepped down, fans were excited. Given his work in NXT, fans expected the game to recreate a similar magic on the main roster and make Raw and SmackDown feel interesting again. But after almost 3 years of this Triple H experiment, I think it's safe to say that the results have been underwhelming. Creative feels stale. No new stars are being made. The company keeps chasing revenue instead of improving the product, and overall, WWE feels like it's in the worst position it has ever been from a creative standpoint. So how did a reign that started with promise end up being such a catastrophic failure? How did the hope and excitement turn into disappointment and despair? How did WWE lose its magic? This is every Triple H mistake that screwed the WWE. The biggest problem with Triple H's leadership is his dangerous habit of chasing instant gratification rather than building long-term storylines. The clearest example of this was Travis Scott's involvement at WrestleMania. WWE made this mainstream rapper, who had nothing to do with the story, a focal point of the Mania main event, which in turn ruined Cena's final match at WrestleMania. But the worst part? After this, Scott simply vanished from WWE and there was no payoff. The main event of WrestleMania became nothing more than a cheap publicity stunt aimed at getting a few viral reels and some short-lived mainstream exposure. This pattern keeps repeating constantly under Triple H's leadership. Brock Lesnar gets rolled out for a quick pop, shows up for a match, then vanishes for months. AJ Lee returns after a decade, gets a huge pop, then vanishes for weeks. These moments trend on social media and generate buzz for a few days, but they're just fillers that act as distraction from the main product that is empty. When every big moment exists in isolation with no follow-through, fans learn that nothing really matters. Cena's heel turn got retconned without a proper explanation. The Rock's involvement at Elimination Chamber had no payoff, and the entire product seems to be relying on cheap pops and nostalgia acts instead of creating the stars of tomorrow. Speaking of creating stars, this brings us to the next Triple H mistake that has screwed the WWE. One of Triple H's biggest shortcomings is his inability to recognize when lightning strikes. Wrestling is about capturing moments at their peak, and Triple H consistently lets those moments slip through his fingers. The most painful example of this is LA Knight's failed rise. During the summer of 2023, Knight was undeniable. His catchphrases were trending. His merchandise was outselling everyone. The crowd was behind him, and Knight seemed to be in the perfect position to become WWE's next big thing. All Triple H had to do was strike while the iron was hot. Instead, he hesitated. Knight was handed mid-card scraps, and by the time he finally won the United States Championship, it felt more like a compensation than a victory. What could have been a once-in-a-decade breakout star became just another guy on the roster. Now imagine if Vince had done the same thing with Stone Cold during the Attitude Era. Imagine Vince played it safe and kept relying on older stars instead of letting Austin run wild during the Attitude Era. Or imagine if WWE hesitated to pull the trigger on Cena's rise to the main event spot back in 2005. While it's always a gamble to bet on new stars and their momentum, Triple H has shown a complete lack of backbone by putting a stop to the organic growth of names like LA Knight, Drew McIntyre, Jacob Fatu, Kevin Owens, and many other names who could have been the next breakout star in the WWE. And this bleeds directly into his next mistake that'll lead to the demise of WWE if not fixed soon. Wrestling history is defined by its icons. Hulk Hogan owned the 1980s. Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock dominated the late 1990s. John Cena carried the entire 2000s on his back. Under Triple H's watch, not a single performer has been added to that Mount Rushmore. Roman Reigns became a crossover name, but his rise began under Vince McMahon's booking. Everyone else remains trapped inside wrestling's bubble. The problem isn't a lack of talent, it's a lack of backbone and creative direction. The roster is stacked with incredible performers who could be stars if given proper direction. But instead of booking them in meaningful feuds that progress their character, Triple H is content to have a deep roster of solid workers who put on good matches without any story to back them up. Randy Orton didn't become a legend because of 5-star matches. He became a household name because he pushed boundaries, kicked legends in the skull, attacked Triple H's wife, put Vince in the hospital, and broke every rule imaginable. John Cena didn't become an icon because of his moveset. It was because of his never-give-up persona that was amplified through his battles against names like Edge, Umaga, and Batista. Kane didn't become popular because of his technical wrestling skills. He became a nightmare for children and adults because of how sick and twisted his persona was. Stars are made through emotional investment, through moments that transcend wrestling and etch their names in people's memories. Triple H either doesn't understand this or doesn't care enough to take the risks necessary to create those moments. The roster is full of talents who can put on 5-star matches, but almost nobody has a gimmick that's worth remembering for more than 5 minutes. And one of the biggest reasons behind the lack of stars, it's the absolute horrible presentation of wrestlers today that destroys all their aura. A key factor that makes or breaks a wrestler's presentation is their theme song. With a few minor exceptions, the music produced by Def Rebel for the wrestlers has been utterly dreadful. The themes are soulless, generic, and somehow all sound exactly the same. There's no personality, no vocals, nothing that makes you instantly connect with a character. This failure is particularly shocking given Triple H's own career. He should understand better than anyone how crucial a great theme song is to a wrestler's presentation. Yet under his leadership, theme songs have become an afterthought. Talent themselves have publicly expressed displeasure with their entrance music, and fans complain about it constantly. The issue keeps getting raised every month, yet nothing ever changes. Triple H is too focused on his work-rate wrestlers and mediocre storylines, while treating the wrestler's presentation as a complete afterthought. And this work-rate issue ties in directly to the next mistake on our list. When Triple H took control of Raw and SmackDown, he tried to book these weekly shows like extended versions of NXT TakeOver specials. Cards were filled with 25-minute work-rate matches that tried to replicate the golden era of NXT. But what Hunter failed to understand is that what worked for hardcore fans in NXT's Full Sail arena doesn't work for the millions of casual viewers on Monday nights. The biggest factor behind the success of TakeOver events was that the matches had solid stories going into them. Be it Gargano versus Ciampa, Bayley versus Sasha Banks, or Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens, every match had a backstory that justified the wrestlers fighting for over 20 minutes. But on Raw and SmackDown, random wrestlers are booked into these 20-minute-long matches with no build-up and no logic. Moreover, when you give away pay-per-view quality bouts every single week, nothing feels special anymore. Fans stop appreciating these matches because they know they can just tune in next week to watch another one of these flippy exhibitions or simply watch AEW Collision. While favoring work-rate matches over storylines and character development have made it impossible to develop new stars, Triple H has taken things a step further and even ruined the legacy of established stars to satisfy his ego. Triple H's inability to put his ego aside and his favoritism has created an unfair environment that ruins the careers of talented stars. If you are one of Triple H's favorites like Rhea Ripley or Seth Rollins, you get endless chances and a permanent spot in the main event scene. But if the game doesn't like you, even overwhelming fan support can't save you. Names like Karrion Kross, Drew McIntyre, and LA Knight are perfect examples of this injustice. Even a megastar like John Cena couldn't escape Triple H's mega ego, and his retirement tour ended up being a total disaster, relying on shock moments. Unless you're one of Triple H's golden boys, Triple H will either keep you stuck in meaningless feuds till your momentum has been sucked dry, or he'll simply release you to make way for his chosen ones. What makes things worse is Triple H's obsession of hoarding talent without having any plans for them. Triple H will sign names like Andrade, Aleister Black, and other ex-AEW stars and indie names just for a cheap pop that leads to nothing. Carmelo Hayes got called up without any plans. The Wyatt Six consumed months of TV time despite delivering zero meaningful payoffs. When Triple H took over, he brought back names like Gargano, Dakota Kai, Braun Strowman, and Karrion Kross. While the initial pop was loud, these stars soon faded into obscurity due to poor booking and meaningless stories. It's the same recurring names of Seth Rollins, Rhea Ripley, and Sami Zayn in the main event scene, while others stay stuck in the undercard or catering before eventually being released. And this is baffling because given the fact that WWE has almost 50 titles in 2025, you'd expect Triple H to find at least one meaningful feud for all the talented stars on the roster. WWE currently has almost 24 championships spread across Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and various developmental programs. That might sound impressive on paper, but in reality, it's created a scenario where most titles are completely meaningless. When you have too many belts, none of them feel important. The Women's United States Championship has become the poster child for this failure. The tag team division has suffered even worse. Raw's World Tag Team Championships have been defended only a couple of times in recent memory. The SmackDown tag titles didn't even make it to the Mania card, and most titles just feel like participation trophies instead of achievements. This tag team scene failure is particularly frustrating because Triple H built his NXT reputation partially on his booking of tag team wrestling. He booked some of the most memorable tag matches in NXT with DIY, American Alpha, and the Undisputed Era. Yet on the main roster, tag titles have become background props. And while WWE keeps introducing new titles and destroying the meaning of winning a championship belt, the title picture isn't the only place that's lost its aura under Triple H's leadership. While live events have been basically abolished in 2025, the introduction of the Saturday night's main event shows has completely destroyed the novelty that made WWE pay-per-views feel like a big deal. For the first half of 2025, there were periods where WWE presented a major show every single week. This relentless schedule might have been acceptable if the shows were consistently excellent, but most of these shows have been totally underwhelming. When everything is treated as a major event, nothing actually feels major. If you miss a show, it doesn't matter, because another one is coming in a few days anyway. Fans need breathing room to build anticipation and let storylines develop naturally. Instead, they're expected to maintain peak interest every single week, which is simply impossible. What's more frustrating is WWE turning shows like SummerSlam into two-night events and killing their vibe. WrestleMania's expansion into a two-night event was initially justified as a necessary step to accommodate an oversized roster and overcome the pandemic's restrictions. But the reality proved far less impressive. Those early two-night WrestleManias featured lifeless matches like Cesaro vs. Drew Gulak, Elias vs. Corbin, and Natalya vs. Liv Morgan that had no business being on the biggest show of the year. 5 years later, WWE hasn't learned from these mistakes. Instead, Triple H has doubled down on the disaster. WrestleMania remains a two-night extravaganza, and now SummerSlam has been expanded to feature both Saturday and Sundays. The company is too focused on quantity, while the quality keeps going down the gutter. And Triple H is showing no signs of slowing down. Many sites have reported that 2026's Survivor Series and 2027's Royal Rumble are expected to debut the two-night format. It's inevitable that Money in the Bank and other major shows will follow soon. And all of this ties into the next unforgivable sin Triple H has committed. Professional wrestling has always had a relationship with advertising, but in 2025, this relationship has taken precedence over the actual product. Previously, pay-per-view events might have a couple of sponsors whose branding appeared occasionally throughout the broadcast. Now, individual matches have their own specific sponsors, with embarrassingly large logos plastered across the ring canvas. WWE's transition into two-night events is a money-hungry business strategy that prioritizes this doubled advertising revenue over product quality. Raw and SmackDown are bombarded with product placement to the point where fans feel like they're trudging through a commercial minefield just to watch wrestling. And for the fans who attend these shows live, the nightmare simply keeps getting worse. If you've attended a WWE event in 2025, congratulations on surviving the financial devastation. Ticket prices have skyrocketed to levels that make WWE accessible only to wealthy fans, completely abandoning the working-class families who built wrestling's foundation. WrestleMania 42, scheduled again for Las Vegas, revealed pricing that caused widespread outrage. The highest-priced floor seats cost a staggering $8,998. Even the absolute worst seats in the stadium will set fans back by almost $1,000. This is absolutely baffling given the fact that just 3 years ago, you could get one of the best seats in the house for WrestleMania just for $500. In just a few years, prices have increased by factors of 10 or more, while the product continues getting worse. Even for all his mistakes and wrongdoings, Vince McMahon made sure to keep wrestling accessible to the working families and not pollute the ring with endless advertisements. But today, under Triple H and TKO, the message is clear. WWE no longer cares about being accessible to average families. They'd rather sell fewer tickets at astronomical prices to wealthy clients than maintain the passionate, diverse fanbase that made wrestling popular. WrestleMania 43 is scheduled for Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, which tells you everything about their priorities. But even the pricing disaster pales in comparison to this next Triple H mistake that's actively ruining WWE for the loyal longtime fans. For 40 years under Vince McMahon, WWE maintained certain boundaries. Kayfabe was sacred, and only under specific circumstances would talent acknowledge wrestling's scripted nature. This approach preserved wrestling's integrity and allowed fans to suspend disbelief. Under Triple H, those protective walls have been demolished. WWE Unreal stands as the biggest example of this philosophy. Triple H's obsession with being the focal point and making himself look like the main character is actively ruining the magic of WWE and driving fans away from the product. While most fans obviously understand wrestling is predetermined, but straight up showing them the inner workings of WWE is like a magician telling the audience exactly how they perform their tricks. It kills the excitement. It kills the mystique. And while WWE under Triple H constantly keeps burying kayfabe, but at the same time, it wants to present the matches on Raw and SmackDown as legit sports competitions where in-ring work is supposed to be taken seriously. This bipolar booking feels lazy, and it seems like WWE is confused about its own identity. Does the company want to embrace the chaos and bring back the craziness of the Attitude Era, or does it want to present pro wrestling like a reality show and turn it into Keeping Up with the Kardashians? This identity crisis is the biggest killer behind WWE's downfall in recent times, and until Triple H gets this right, there's no hope for WWE to make a comeback to its peak form. Speaking of peak form, check out this video next to relieve the WWE at its peak during the Attitude Era.